Hello humans, it's just Martine, and today I'm going to be sharing with you the second half of my reading for the Buzzwordathon this past year. So this will contain reviews from the last 6 months of Buzzwordathon books. If you missed my first Buzzwordathon vlog, check it out right here. Enjoy! For the month of July, the buzzword prompt was like books or whatever, bookish words. So I read How to Write Good and I did not like it. I gave it 1.5 stars. This was the Target edition, so there was also some extra stuff in the back. This had like kind of a mixed media format where it was partially told through the actual story and then partially told through these like graphic novel style comics that were basically conversations between the author and the ghostwriter, and that really like took me out of the story. There were some really dangerous activities, dangerous both mentally and physically, that were like lightly given a disclaimer, but like not nearly enough. It ended really abruptly after those things. I feel bad giving a memoir such a low rating. I really did not jive with this. I also have never watched any of this YouTuber's videos. Somebody just gave me this book one time, I think because it seemed writing related. And I was like, I'll read it because it's a quick read, and there have been some YouTubers who have written books and their books are actually quite good. And oh well, but July prompt done. I think the buzzword for August was like object or thing. So anyway, I read The Puppet Master because I felt like puppet was definitely like an object or thing. I counted it, but technically in this volume there were 3 separate stories. There was a novella, a novel, and a novelette. It's been a while since I've read them, so my details on it are kind of murky. I did give it 2 stars, which probably explains why my thoughts about it are so murky so quickly after I read it, I would say. But I'm glad that I did give it a chance and get it off my shelves. It was this weird mix of like futuristic sci-fi because it's set in the future, but there was definitely paranormal stuff, like there were psychics involved and all of these things, which was quite strange from the perspective of like the society that it was set in. And it was about this character who worked as an investigator in an investigative agency, so not the police, but a separate agency. And in the novella, which is the first story, he's just, I'm not even sure it was a junior investigator anyway. Each time he solves like a major crime among these 3 stories, he moves up and becomes like a more senior part of the organization, which I thought was interesting. I have to say, I didn't really understand a lot of it. They did go into quite a bit of detail about the specific steps that he took, which on the one hand in investigative stories is very important to me. I like to know what the character is doing. On the other hand, I felt like at times it was a bit much and made me lose focus in the way it was described. That's kind of why I got 2 stars. For the September prompt of a book with light or dark in the title, I read The Woman Trapped in the Dark by J.D. Mason. I'm giving this 3 stars. It's a thriller about this woman. She's romantically involved with this very rich man, and so she gets kidnapped, and the kidnappers have a ransom for her that she doesn't know about, but they've contacted her boyfriend. It's not just money that they want, because that would be too easy. They say like, in 5 days, we're going to send you this contract for this project you really didn't want to be a part of, and you have to sign it, otherwise we're not giving her back. First of all, they're making him wait 5 days to make that decision, which is just crazy. You know, it was an interesting time, not like the best thriller that I've ever read, or not the most engaging. It did get repetitive in some parts, but overall, it gave me like what I was looking for from this, so 3 stars. For October, the prompt was like animal in the title, so I read The Teeth of the Tiger by Tom Clancy. This was my first Tom Clancy book ever. I gave it 2.5 stars. A couple things about this. One, I picked this up knowing literally nothing about it but the title, how it looked, how it felt in my hands, because the back just has a quote from it and a big old picture of Tom Clancy, no synopsis. Is there a synopsis in the beginning? No, there's not. They're just like, read this book, maybe. So I did, because I'm chaotic like that sometimes. This was another one of those books that centers around a terrorism plot, and I've done my whole spiel about this in a past video. And I have to say, this book handled it better than that last book I talked to you about with those themes. I'm not saying they handled it perfectly, I am saying that they handled it better. Where like some of the main characters in this book even had the thought process like, oh, terrorism has nothing to do with these religions. It has to do with something else. Even when people say it's about religion, it's like kind of not, you know? And they did a good job being like, there is more than one group in the world commits acts of terrorism. You know, they did a good job with that. But there were some questionable choices in here. I do have to say, though, that I think in some ways this was significantly less, like, realistic in how this would be handled and the type of plotline that this would have. This was very fictionalized. And because of that, it has a little more wiggle room. Because I don't think it's as likely that somebody would read this book and be like, this is exactly what's happening in the real world. Some they'll always do that. But compared to the last book I talked to you about, I think this would form less bad impressions in people. Again, not perfect. Didn't love that aspect of it. I have to say, this lost a lot of points for the ending. It ended abruptly. I was reading the last like 10 pages and I was like, how is this? Did they cut out the last part of this book? Because this is not a resolution. Turns out it is the beginning of a series, but I still think that's a terrible ending for a first book, regardless. I had like a pretty okay time reading this. It was especially good compared to that other book that I talked about in the past. You know, all in all, it did have an animal in the title. So that's my review. The November prompt ends in ing, so I read Waiting by Han Jin. I'm giving this 4 stars. The basic premise of this is it's about this man, Lin. He has a wife back at home, but he doesn't live at home because he's a doctor for the army, I believe, the Chinese army. He meets this woman, Mana. She's a nurse, and they strike up a friendship. It could be something more. They never cross any lines, but like people around the base are talking about them. He tries to get a divorce from his wife, but every year he goes home for the summer to get this divorce and something pops up that causes it to like not happen. So now it's been like 18 years since he and Mana started getting close, and he's still married to his wife, and he's like determined to get this divorce finalized. I thought this definitely had some interesting things to say about like the conception of marriage in general, as well as like discussions about love. So it was interesting, and it was definitely like a quick read to me, which I appreciated, but I don't think I have many thoughts other than that to share with you. So like, glad I read this. Moving on. All right, for the December prompt of numbers, I read 206 Bones by Kathy Reich, which is actually number 12 in a series, and it doesn't say that anywhere on here, but it's fine because it's just like an investigative series, so you really can read them in whatever order. But I know that Ruby commented on my review and was like, I'm interested to see why you're reading the 12th book in a series. Sorry, Ruby, it's actually not that interesting of a reason. I just happen to own this book. It has numbers in the title, and I didn't know it was a 12th book. Not that that would have stopped me from reading it, though. So yeah, this is a book by one of the original producers of Bones. And so the main character is a forensic anthropologist. And okay, here's the thing. I gave this a 3 stars because I had a fun time with this. I especially liked that it was largely set in Montreal, and so had like lots of French stuff mentioned, and I was just like, Canada, yes. It made my heart happy. But there were several issues with this. One, I saw the twist coming from like as soon as a character was introduced. Like the first bad thing happened and I was like, oh, this person did it. And then she was shocked later. She was like, oh my goodness, this person did this. And I was like, yeah. What's wrong with you? That kind of took away the fun, because like figuring out right before a reveal is one thing, but knowing as soon as you see a character like, oh, that's the character, and like it wasn't even in a this is good foreshadowing way. This was just like this was blatant, and the character was a bit stupid not to notice this. And then also there are aspects of the forensic anthropology in this that are really questionable, and some of the reasons that this producer left Bones in the first place, I found out. So those parts made me a little uncomfortable, but overall it was like an interesting time. So 3 stars. So honestly, not the best, but we had some winners in there. Ernie's in my lap right now, if you can hear him snuffling. So that's this video. If you liked it, go ahead and give it a big thumbs up and comment down below. Did you participate in the Buzzwordathon this past year, or are you going to next year? And subscribe for more reading, writing, and college lifestyle content. And until next time, bye humans, bye!